Hello there, and welcome to The High Ground, a doof bonus content show where we're sailing into Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean. I'm your Commodore, Elliot Diebold.
And I'm your captain, Georgia Diebold.
And I'm the gross scallywag, Reuben Morehouse.
Nobody told me we were meant to do funny voices.
Wait, I didn't do a funny voice, that's my normal voice.
Do you guys remember, I don't know if this is a real thing or not, but I remember back when I was in high school, there definitely was both a talk like a pirate day and a dress like a pirate day.
I remember Talk Like a Pirate Day, and everybody would change their Facebook. And Facebook, you could change your language to pirate.
Pirate language, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
I don't remember Dress Like a Pirate Day.
I think I remember that existing, but I don't think my school celebrated it.
It was, right when, I think I was probably in year 6, I want to say, when Pirates originally came out.
Pirates of the Caribbean came out?
Yeah, and from then until I was in maybe year 11, pirates were like the thing, you know what I mean? It's weird revisiting this movie and remembering just how much of a cultural impact it had.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. It was the shit for quite a while.
Yeah.
I suppose let's get into it. Let's get into the shit.
I have one more thing to say before we get into it. I've just remembered this. So this is me. I was thinking back to when Pirates of the Caribbean first came out, and I was in year 6, I think, either year 5 or year 6. And we came back from whatever school holidays, Christmas holidays, or some summer holidays, and we were doing a thing about what's your favorite movie? We were talking about our favorite movies. And I said Pirates of the Caribbean, but because I was such a young and edgy teenager, I didn't want to just answer the question honestly. So for some reason, I remember saying it was, and this was the high level of humor that I had at the time, I called it Parrots of the Curry Bean. Huh? And that's just the kind of highbrow humor you can expect from the show.
Wow. So, Reuben, you'd already reached your current level of humor at age 13.
I peaked early, guys.
I don't even understand the joke at all.
It's not really anything. It's just pronouncing it wrong.
Yeah, it really sounds like
a joke in there. Anyway, should we get with that very important fact out of the way? Should we get on with the show?
But it's all downhill from there, really. How can we top that?
Okay, so we open as Elizabeth and her daddy governor are on a ship moving to Port Royal from England. They find another ship that's been all blown up, which nobody seems that upset by. Anyway, they rescue a young kid called Will Turner, who they find just floating on a wooden plank there, and Elizabeth immediately steals stuff from him.
But for a good reason, because she doesn't want him to just be killed by her dad or whatever, I guess.
Yeah, although that doesn't explain why she kept it from him for the next 10 years or whatever.
Because she could. I don't know.
Yeah, she's rich and he's scum.
She gets
what? She's going to give it back?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, exactly.
Also, you said that nobody was upset by the blown up ship. There was that one guy being like, pirates.
Yeah,
well,
Gibbs.
That was Gibbs.
We'll get to him.
I didn't realize until rewatching that he was like, there must be so much backstory to this, right?
Yeah.
Because he doesn't need to be there. He shows up later, and it makes less sense that he is there now, right? Because then in the like 15 years, I guess, since
it's 8.
Oh my god! So not even that. In the 8 years from this timeline to when the main timeline of the movie, the point in the movie takes time. He's had such a fall from grace as to fall out of the Navy, become a pirate, and then fuck up being a pirate and become a drunk in just 8 years. He's had such a downturn.
It's crazy that somebody who was so scared of pirates became a pirate. That is... Pirates of the Caribbean 6
therapy.
Should definitely be a prequel / during the first film, I want this guy's story. I think it'd be a great movie.
Like that, you know how they did Lion King 1.5 or whatever that was like Timon and Pumbaa.
Yeah. Pirates of the Caribbean 5.5.
Yeah.
Was it 5? It is 5.
Well, I guess it's important that it happened so quickly, just over 8 years, his fall from grace, because remember, for all the, hubbub about pirates, like, piracy was only a thing for, like, not a long time, right? It was like, I don't know, like 60 or 70 years where pirates were actually a thing. It was a very short period of time where pirates really existed properly in this way that we think of them.
Yeah, that's very true.
I'm not going to lie. My knowledge of pirates and piracy, a concerning amount of it comes from these films. So
this is the thing that makes pirate mythos, right? Like Treasure Island, I guess, is often claimed to be the main one, but pirates really, even more so than any other, potential theme for a season on Westworld or whatever you want to call them, like even more so than any of these other types of things, is just so like flash in the pan. It really shouldn't be as big of a cultural phenomenon as it is, and I guess it's things like Pirates of the Caribbean that make it so.
Yeah.
So this movie is based on a theme park ride, right? Which again, I didn't know about back in year 5 or year 6, but it's interesting to think about. And only on this watch so many years later, looking back through it, you can kind of see that they were intentionally very much like, let's make this like a theme park ride, because there's so much like swinging around and jumping on rolling barrels and whatever else you might expect. It's very like frantic
Reuben,
in a very fun way.
You haven't been on the ride, have you?
I mean, no, I haven't.
So, look, it's not frantic and it's not very fun.
So we to give our own backstory on this. Our family went on a trip to California in the year 2000. So when I was in about year 4 or so, and we went to Disneyland as part of that. And so this movie came out in 2003, so it was like 3 years later. But we'd been on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, and it's one of those ones where they sit you in a little boat that goes at like walking speed. And there's just like animatronics singing songs and doing skits. So the scene where they go to Tortuga, and there's just like people everywhere and like falling off balconies and stuff.
Yeah,
like that was the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. Is you're just sitting in this thing and you're watching
that
animatronic models clearly lowered down slowly so they can be lifted back up before the next group comes through.
It was better than the It's a Small World ride, though.
Well, only barely.
It didn't have the song, so fuck.
So that's a win. So what kind of things are in the ride? I'm assuming skeleton pirates are like the center point of it, because that's what felt the most theme parky to me.
I was like 2 years younger than Elliot. I do not remember it well.
Yeah, I would have been like 9 or 10. So
yeah, I was 8. So
yeah, I do remember the dog with the keys. That's from the ride.
That's a part. Oh, cool.
Yeah, like there's one of the, because it's just like a series of tableau sort of things, like dioramas basically. And there's a diorama of like it's exactly that scene from the movie where there's like 6 or 7 prisoners in this cell and they're all like reaching out with bones, going like, "Here, doggy," and there's a dog just sitting there with keys, like wiggling its head or something. Again, it has been a while. My memories are a bit vague, but yeah.
So, as a diehard Pirates of the Caribbean ride fan, Elliot, do you think this did it justice? Did this do justice to the,
Like, so this is the weird thing, right? Is this movie should just not have worked, because
I know, right?
It's an action movie based on what was, frankly, a shitty Disneyland ride that I'm not sure why it was still operational and taking up that much space in the theme park in the year 2000 still.
Yeah.
And for some reason, they hired writers, producers, and composers that just far outshone what this movie deserved. And like, holy crap, it works.
Yeah. I don't know if I should spoil this now or get to this later, but I do have a central thesis for this film, which is that it's effectively The Princess Bride. I think explicitly what they would have done is went to the writers and said, we want a movie based on this theme park ride. Just make us a Princess Bride type of thing. Go do that. And then they did it, and they delivered on it very well. And I love The Princess Bride. This movie is great because it's so similar to The Princess Bride. We'll get to this in more specifics as we go, but almost certainly, I reckon that's what happened.
I can see that. It definitely feels like they're like, hey, this ride is iconic and we need to justify keeping it in Disneyland. somebody go make a movie about it. And then one of them was like, I want to do The Princess Bride, but it's pirates.
I love The Princess Bride. I want to do that too. Oh my
I
God,
can
I was
definitely see
just
the
about to
connection.
post that same picture. I'm not even kidding.
I've just
post it
posted in
right
that
next to
document
yours.
the picture of. I found a picture of these crewmates in the cell animatronics. Looking through, I kind of just took a quick glance through some screenshots of these animatronics, and yeah, I can see basically there's so many of the films that are just like absolutely 1-to-1 shots.
Yeah.
Should we get back to
yeah.
to the
Yeah, sorry. So we're still 8 years before the movie.
Yeah.
They found a ship blown up. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I felt about this as an opening scene. Like, it does anybody else feel like the tone was so different? Like the rest of the movie and the rest of the kind of start of the movie in particular is quite like fun and a bit silly, full of action. And this scene was like quite dark and sort of spooky, but it did have a lot of really useful information. Like we meet all the main characters, it gets the plot rolling, and it does kind of, I mean, the tone of the movie does shift sort of partway through, but it just felt really like I'd forgotten. I was expecting this really fun, silly start, and then I'd totally forgotten about that scene, and I was like, whoa, this is like way darker than I remember.
Yeah.
I tend to agree. I'd forgotten this scene existed, which I think shows how well it fits into the movie. I don't. Yeah, I tend to agree. It does feel off. It's an odd start to the movie in that it's like it plays up the mystery side in a way that just doesn't really go anywhere. Like it doesn't set up the actual mystery that I think is meant to carry the plot, which is like, what's the deal with
Who
Will
is
Turner
Will?
and
Why do
people
they
wanting
need his
him?
blood? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. It was mostly the different tones. Like I suddenly found really jarring that I had totally forgotten about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really different tone from the rest of the start of the film.
No, yeah, that's a really good point.
It was
Like
still
she
good though.
sees
I
the
mean, it
black pearl.
established so many plot points, like all of the plot points, like the Black Pearl, all of the characters and their names, the idea of this golden thing that Elizabeth has stolen from Will.
I think you could probably do a better job though, because like it starts off unnecessarily creepy because it's like Elizabeth standing up on the ship alone and it's foggy and she's singing like a pirate song. And it's like, young girls singing is often
Yeah.
used in horror. So
Classic.
you're already sort
Yeah.
of like
Yeah.
creepy vibes. And then Gibbs, I think, comes up and he's like, oh, don't do that. Like pirates will come and, kill us, blah, blah, blah. And it's like if they'd started with something kind of goofy and lighthearted with like a young girl on the ship like playing around,
Yeah.
and then they could have leaned into, as she's playing around, she sees the ship that's on fire, or she sees Will, and like then it becomes more serious, and that would actually kind of fit in with the overall thing of the movie, which starts silly and then has that moment of like, oh shit, this is
Yeah.
serious.
Like looking back on it now, I don't mind the scene. Like once you know the film, but it was funny. Like if you imagine sitting in the theater and you're like a parent, and you're like taking your kid to see this movie based on a Disney ride, and then it starts off like that, you'd be like, oh God, have I misread this? Like, is this a horror movie?
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder. The tone of this film is interesting because so much of it is so goofy, but then Barbossa and the bad pirates, I guess we'll call them, are actually, I think, quite scary, right? Like they're actually,
Yeah.
I mean, they're kid movie scary, but still,
Yeah.
they do a good job of making them actually feel dangerous, except for the two shitty ones, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I think you're right that this is an interesting tone to set at the start. The thing that I couldn't help but focus on at the very start is Norrington is already a fully grown adult here. Elizabeth is
in his 30s.
Yeah.
He looks the same as he does in the whole rest of the movie, funnily
exactly
enough.
the same. But here he's clearly like 20 or 30 years older than Elizabeth, and that just skeeves me out so much.
Yeah, it's really creepy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was sort of a thing back then.
I tried to stretch it in my mind to be like, maybe he's like 21 and she's like 12 or 13.
No. She's like
But then the
9
more I
and
looked
he's
at
like
them, the more I was
30.
like,
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah.
It's too much. It's definitely too much. Why is Elizabeth on this boat at all? I don't understand why
I
she's
think
here.
they're moving
Yeah,
to
they are.
the Caribbean from England, was what I was guessing.
Yeah, they mention it later in the film, like briefly. It's like a throwaway line that was the trip that they were moving here from England.
I missed that, I think. I was not paying attention to that between all the
Because I had the same thought
swashbuckling.
until that throwaway line. I remember I was like, why on earth have they brought her here? Especially when it's bad luck to have a woman on a ship. Gibbs is probably thinking of that night.
One last thing. So the place they're moving to from England is called Port Royal, and I was coming prepared to make fun of pirates for naming this place like Port Royal, like the franchise. But it turns out that's actually the name of like the old capital of Jamaica.
I had no
So
idea. That's so interesting.
yeah, so apparently we should be making fun of the real life British colonialists who are idiots and called it Port Royal, as if that's like a worthy name for anywhere.
It's very boring. It's very uncreative.
Now, it wouldn't be an episode of this show if we didn't have a bit of diving into the Wikipedia, the fan wiki for this. The fan wiki page for Port Royal just genuinely just has like history lessons on it. Like, this is on the Pirates of the Caribbean wiki. I'm not here to learn about the actual history of Port Royal. Come on.
I've just been on the wiki as well, actually. And do you know the names of the two pirates, the goofy ones from Barbossa's crew?
There's UK Rainn Wilson and the one that kind of looks like Filch from Harry Potter.
I have no idea. Absolutely. I don't even have a guess.
I want to say it's like Scrawny and Gruncho. Am I right?
I mean, that's pretty close.
Yeah, I
like
thought it would be.
in the vibe. They're called Pintel and Rigetti.
Sure.
The weird thing is, I can't find any details on which is which.
I don't think they have addressed each other by name at all in the film.
I don't think they get those names in the films. I think this is the classic thing that we've discovered in all the franchises we've covered so far, where there's all this lore that doesn't actually make it into the film, so the writers sneak them onto the wiki to make it look like they did their job.
They're the ones updating the wikis.
Someone's gotta know about all this lore, the backstory that I made for Rigetti.
But I couldn't fit it into the dialogue.
Okay, so back to the movie. We skip 8 years later, and Elizabeth is set to marry Norrington, which we've already established is creepy.
So you reckon she's 17 here for the rest of the film? If she was 9 in that first
feels
scene,
right to me, right?
I'd say probably 18-ish. Yeah.
Yeah.
You reckon? Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I
obviously
think so.
Keira Knightley isn't, but like Hollywood. Anyway, so like Norrington sort of proposes to Elizabeth, but she's not very good at fashion, so she faints and like falls off a whole fucking cliff because her response to feeling faint is to go and stand next to a cliff face.
She loves
Actually
falling
does
off
that.
cliffs, that one. In fact, everyone in this movie loves falling off cliffs.
Also, was
Does
the
that
cliff,
look right?
was
Actually.
the cliff way higher than anybody else remembered? When she fell, I was like, oh shit, that's really
Yeah.
high.
That's a height you can die from. for
Yeah.
sure.
I don't know how she
Anyway,
survived.
she has to get rescued by the newly arrived in town, Captain Jack Sparrow.
And how iconic is it when Sparrow jumps off of this, not even jumps, steps off of this sinking ship onto the dock? Like, this movie has so many absolutely iconic moments. That moment, the moment when Norrington starts to confess to Elizabeth and he turns around for but the briefest moment and she just falls off the ramparts. It's so great.
It's so good. I feel like it's the introduction of Jack Sparrow is such a good introduction to a character. Like it just
Yeah.
tells you, like you just get such a strong sense of what the character's going to be like. Such a good introduction.
Without any dialogue. Like
Yeah.
it's him standing proudly on a ship that's sinking and he brings it just into the dock. Like that's just who Jack Sparrow is.
And then
Yeah.
just walks off it like he owns the place.
Yeah, and then he starts doing his words and like, you get that classic like Jack Sparrow speak. But You're right. It's so it so immediately establishes who he is.
Yeah. And the scene with Elizabeth falling off the cliff is also such a great scene. It's all just right in there, and you're just sitting there like, whoa, I did not remember this movie being this good. It's like 5 minutes in, I was like, fuck, this is a good movie.
What's wild is like as well, like we've already talked about the writing. Like I think the writing of the overall script of the film is good. Like the plot and the characters are all good. But I was constantly shocked at how many fantastic like quips and one-liners and like philosophical statements were included. Like
Yeah.
the writers
good
who did
dialogue.
this movie really fucking overachieved the adaptation of a theme park ride.
Yeah, how was this movie so good? Like, genuinely, I was expecting it to kind of be like, oh yeah, it's fun, but a bit dated. This movie holds up 100%. It is genuinely
it was way
so
better
good.
than I was expecting.
This is an easy 9 out of 10 film for me. Like,
I actually was like looking at the Google Doc tonight and I was like, I feel like rewatching it, and I watched it on Sunday.
Yeah. I'm so excited to watch the next movie and watch this franchise just
as soon as Ellie and I watched it together on Netflix party or whatever the heck it is. And just my first thing as soon as we finished, I was like, can't wait to watch the second one. Like
right?
I just really wanna, as much as I love Star Wars, I've watched the prequels more than I've watched these and more recently, but I did not have that where I was like, God, I just want to watch the next movie. So I was just like, I just want to sit here and do a marathon now.
Yeah.
But it's just like, okay, because to compare to Star Wars, like if you tell someone you're making Star Wars prequel films or even the Star Wars sequel films, and it's like, okay, there is like so much existing lore to work off of. This is a huge franchise. Like writers are gonna want to do it. Like there's so much to work with, and like to various degrees, all of the follow-ups to the Star Wars things have flopped in some way or form. This movie is the opposite.
Except The Mandalorian, which is perfect in every single way.
Yeah. Well, that's not a movie though.
How dare you insult the don't you dare insult the Mandalorian in front of me.
But yeah, but on the other hand, like Pirates had no reason it should work. It's a theme park ride that isn't even a good ride, and like it's just bizarre to me that somebody could take one of the biggest franchises of all time, like Star Wars, and fuck it up and not do it well. And then apparently, on the other hand, you give some people, I don't know, do this theme park ride about pirates or some shit.
People like pirates, don't they? People enjoy pirates.
Yeah,
and that's what they had to go off of.
If you're an executive and you get given the choice between pirate theme park ride and like Star Wars prequels, I know which one I'd pick, and I would have been wrong.
But I think that's why this movie is such a success, because clearly everyone involved is just able to have a good time with it.
And do what they want.
Yeah, like you can unify around it. You can say, okay, we're making a movie that is allowed to be silly, but also we're going to try and include some good stuff in here. And they just knock it out of the park. Like there's no, I mean, I don't know the production story of this film, obviously, but like it felt to me like everyone involved was just like, let's fucking do some batshit cool stuff. Like you hear stories about how Jack Sparrow was originally going to be this kind of like Errol Flynn-esque like swashbuckling hero, and it was kind of Johnny Depp who pushed for this idea of a washed-up rock star type of character, which is an absolutely insane idea, but clearly is one of the things that made this movie such a success, right? Like just because they're allowed to do some weird shit with it.
And it's like really cool having like Elizabeth and Will are both, like you said with the Princess Bride thing, they're quite like stereotypical characters. Don't get me wrong, I really like both of the actors, and I actually really like both of the characters. I think they both bring like a lot of life to the roles that make them really lovable. But then you've just got that contrasted with Jack Sparrow, who's just this completely like original, unique character. It's kind of funny, like how you've got him as the sort of like weird little third wheel in this trio that's so different from these two just like really stereotypical characters.
Yeah, I guess it enhances what would otherwise be a fairly by the numbers story. Like you could sort of see where Will and Elizabeth's plotline and romance is going about 20 seconds into seeing them on screen together. And like Jack is like the wild card that makes it a fun journey to get there.
Yeah.
And let's not overlook Jeffrey Rush, who does a very, very good job as this kind of terrifying Barbossa character.
And I love he's
brilliant.
the really classic swashbuckling pirate.
Yeah.
I love that. I think he's the really like stereotypical pirate character that you just get to enjoy in the
He's
movie.
like the Blackbeard
yeah.
vibe.
Like he's got the pirate accent. He talks like a pirate, like Talk Like a Pirate Day. That's who you're impersonating.
It's every day for him. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, wait, yeah. To touch on what you said, Ruben, about like how people are afraid to do what they want. I think it's just interesting how that carries over to like we constantly made fun of the Star Wars prequels for how bad the dialogue was, but in this movie, the dialogue fucking kicks ass. Like
Yeah.
it's those little details that you would think Star Wars would have had a much easier time getting people behind it who could write human dialogue, but apparently not.
They could only do weird robot, socially awkward robot dialogue.
That's why C-3PO was the hero of the prequels.
Yeah. He's like the most human sounding dialogue sometimes.
Yeah, so to get back to the scene of the movie again, one of the things that comes up for me is Elizabeth doesn't really want to marry Norrington, and she's like umming and ahhing about it because she's in love with Will, and her like maid calls her out on this.
Dude, that maid is so good, by the way.
Which
that
she
moment
makes
of
it like
yeah.
But I mean, Elizabeth makes it really fucking obvious. So when she's like sees Will, she's like, I had a dream about you last night, and her dad's like, oh my god.
Yeah.
It's like,
Put it back in your
girl.
pants, Keira Knightley.
But here's what I don't understand. Norrington's going to be a Commodore. He's only going to be home like 2 months a year. Just marry him and then like fuck Will while he's not there.
You're such a romantic.
Congratulations, Elliot. You've proven that you can think like a straight white guy.
Yeah.
No, I'm thinking
that's so practical. Oh, of course.
Funnily
Why doesn't
enough-
she just do that?
Funnily enough, this thought did not cross my mind.
No, me neither.
yeah, but you're not living in a society that fucking pressures a woman to marry a dude twice her age for political reasons. I'm coming at this from the perspective of she's someone who is basically being pressured by society to do this, and I'm just saying, well, fucking then do it and fuck society like
But
by
in
fucking
all
Will on the
seriousness,
You
side.
say that,
Will
but-
totally. I don't think Will was too precious. He wouldn't have agreed.
Yeah, and you
he
say
was
that
pretty
about
desperate.
society, and
He was
it's
pretty
like
desperate.
obviously in real life that's what this time period was. But as soon as she decides she's not going to marry Norrington, she's going to basically go off and be a pirate. Her dad's like, "All right, cool," and Norrington's like, "All right, whatever." Like,
Yeah,
they're both obviously very chill with it.
I know this is skipping ahead a lot, but I mean, we'll talk about the ending when we get to the ending, won't we?
Yeah. I guess like to touch on the whole society pressure stuff again. I think it's an important part of this movie for me because like obviously like everyone is super sexually repressed in this. Like it's not Victorian times, but same sort of deal. Like Elizabeth, like people are like looking at her when she's wearing like what would be like a pretty well covered t-shirt by today's standards. And it's like I get that that's super bad for society, but like fuck, it makes for like fantastic drama and like love stories because like Elizabeth has to pretend that she's not interested in Will, and he has to pretend he's not interested in her because of classism.
Yeah,
and whatever.
classism makes the best love stories. So unhealthy in real life, but man, does it make a good story.
Yeah, it's like the reason Jane Austen is still huge, right?
That's why
It's because,
period
like,
dramas are so big.
Yeah, it's because it's just the easiest shit to milk for like these people are in love, but society won't let them be, and like that shit is just like honey.
Like this is a slight diversion, but this is one thing that I did enjoy about Bridgerton was that they took that and they kind of flipped it on its head. You guys wouldn't have watched Bridgerton.
I've seen some of it.
Essentially, I appreciate your honesty. I've watched all of it, to my great shame. But I like that instead of doing the thing of like that they couldn't be together, it was like that they pretended to be together and then they like couldn't be together because they would just felt awkward about it. I liked that they flipped it on its head a little bit.
Oh, interesting. So they studied a relationship that was trying to stay together for political reasons.
Well, more like, yeah, they both had their own reasons for why they didn't want people to be pursuing them. So they pretend to be in a relationship, but then they actually fall in love, but reluctantly.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Another classic, the people pretending to be in a relationship
Which was pretty
but actually
fun.
fall for each
And
other.
then it turned into a porno for some reason. I was like sort
Okay.
of playing video games while I watched it, and I was binge watching it on a day off. And then suddenly I looked up, I was like, when did this turn into pornography? It was about episode 5, just turned into porn. It's really weird. Anyway, the
I
first few
heard that
episodes are
about
really
it. I
fun.
heard it was the two things I heard about it were, one, it is kind of Victorian era porn, and then two, it's kind of Victorian era Gossip Girl, and both of those
It's
sound
also,
very
it has
interesting.
an excellent soundtrack. The soundtrack is very good. That's another thing I'd say about
I
it.
was about to say, because the only Bridgerton I've seen is like I went over to our parents' place, Georgia, and Mum was watching it. I watched a bit. Now I'm really glad that I must have come early on in the season.
What a reversal! Walking in and your parents watching a TV show that looks dirty.
I don't think I'd be equipped to handle that. Like if I walked in and there was like graphic sex on the TV at my parents' place, I'd just turn around and drive back home.
Well,
Like
see
I
ya.
don't think I'm equipped with the skills to handle that
Because
situation.
it's not even like flashy, like Game of Thrones style porn in this show, like Bridgerton. It's like porn scene. It's weird. Anyway,
Like Lord Bridgerton comes in with a cheese and sausage pizza, and Lady Bridgerton doesn't have any money to pay him. What's going to happen?
Pretty much.
So this is all staying in the episode,
Yeah.
right?
So back to Pirates of the Caribbean. We can do Bridgerton next.
Yeah.
No thanks.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I got in this scene. So after Johnny Depp saves, or what's his name, Jack Sparrow saves Elizabeth from drowning, and then like as soon as everybody arrives, they're just like, "All right, kill him."
Yeah.
What? I'm not sure if I missed if it was because he ripped off the corset or what. But it's like, why are they going to kill him? But I'm not sure. Is it just because he's clearly a pirate? Like he's clearly a pirate.
He touched her shoulder. That is a capital crime in these times, to touch the shoulder of a woman.
I think that must have been it, because
That's what it felt like to me. It was very weird.
It had
Norrington gets
little
all up in his
explanation.
grill. Yeah, Norrington gets all up in his grill. He's like, "How dare you touch her?" And it's like, he fucking saved her life. Like,
he
what are you
literally just
talking about?
pulled her from the water, and then they're just like, "All right, time to die." It was really weird. I was like,
And
I'm
then
not following.
Yeah, they justify it later by showing that he is a pirate, and then it's like, oh well, now we do get to kill him because he's a pirate.
Yeah, it feels like they kind of had written it that they find out he's a pirate and prepare to kill him, but then they kind of had realized they'd messed up some of the sequencing a bit, and so they needed to kind of mix it up, and that nobody realized until they were already filming that it didn't quite make sense anymore.
And then they're like,
there was only budget. There was only budget for one take, and the guy who plays Norrington got the lines mixed up.
Yeah, they filmed it out of order, and the editors didn't notice.
I have to say though, I did have a good chuckle the bit where he's like, holding Elizabeth captive, and he's making her like buckle up his like belt and his stuff back onto him, and he just gives Norrington that little like shit-eating grin. That was funny.
Classic.
He is good at stirring shit with people, Jack. Yeah, so speaking of, Jack almost escapes after saving Elizabeth, but Will's master is there to stop him after Will holds him up for a little bit. So then later that night, the Black Pearl attacks because when Elizabeth fell in the water, the coins sound out like a SOS signal or something.
Which
it was very random.
It was very strange. Like, that's the one thing in this film where you can kind of tell the writers gave up and were like, fuck it.
Yeah.
Let's just make it sound out a magic, GPS or whatever.
Because it doesn't do that later.
No, it doesn't.
No.
It's a once-off thing.
In fact, they've spent, some long amount of years trying to track down this specific gold medallion. So clearly, this isn't like a thing that it just does randomly. It just somehow
it turned out it just had to touch salt water, I guess. But then why? And also, it never did that ever again. So yeah, it was a bit weird.
Yeah, because it doesn't do that when she swims away from Aldemerta with Will. So, anyway, they sort of kidnap Elizabeth. I don't know if kidnap's the right word, honestly. She kind of volunteers. And she decides to give them a fake name so they won't know she's the governor's daughter, and she chooses Will's surname, which is about the worst fake name she could have chosen.
Yeah. It's a
So
classic mistake.
yeah, it's good. So they decide they're taking her to the place that cursed them. So they can put her medallion and her blood back and lift the curse.
The fake name thing was sort of really cute. It reminded me of like that teenage girl stereotype of the girl like in her notebook writing her name with her crush's surname, like pretending that they're married.
Mrs. Elizabeth Turner
like,
practicing her signature
I'm
and
Elizabeth
stuff.
Turner.
With love hearts.
Ooh, yeah. Little love hearts all around the edges, yeah.
But it is just so fun when you see all the pirates light up that her name is Turner and get really excited. This is one of those films where I wish I could wipe my memory and rewatch this mystery of Will's name, like from the start again.
Yeah.
Because when the other thing I noticed was when Jack goes into Will's blacksmithy shop and first sees him, Jack's first thing that he says to him is, "Oh, you look familiar," or something like that.
Yeah,
yeah.
And I was just like, "Oh my god, this movie is so good! How did I not know?"
Yeah. He's like, "Oh, have I like threatened you before or something like that?" He's like, "Yeah, you look familiar." So that was a great touch.
So brilliant.
Yeah. And then I mean, obviously, so we have this fight here in the barn or the blacksmithery. It's so good. Like, it's just a sword fight in a single room, and it kicks fucking ass.
Again, very Princess Bride. It effectively is the sword fight at the top of the Cliffs of Insanity from Princess Bride, right? Like, this movie, beat for beat, I swear to God, it goes through Princess Bride stuff. When you think about Will's character is effectively the small town kind of farm boy, stable boy, who becomes this like hotshot pirate, right? Like, that's his character. It's perfect.
Yeah.
He's just fucking Wesley from Princess Bride, and it works so well. I'm not bagging it out. It works very well. It's just different enough that you can kind of enjoy the ride and not be constantly thinking about it.
Well, it's like they split Wesley up into Jack Sparrow and Will.
Yeah, true. The before and the after. So yeah, everything's kind of silly at the start of this movie, right? And then we get to the bit where Keira Knightley's on Barbossa's ship, and things get very, very spooky. The reveal, I mean, the effects don't necessarily hold up very well, but it's always in the dark, which is great, so you never really see them. The skeleton pirates, like, brilliant. It all just works so well, and suddenly you're in a very scary movie, and you get that kick-ass line from Barbossa about believing in ghost stories because you're in one, and you're just like, oh, chills. That's so good. Jeffrey Rush is so good in this role.
He is so good. That was the one scene that was a little clunky, is then when they start like flinging Elizabeth around the ship and you're a bit like, what the hell's going on?
Well, that's a theme park ride scene.
Yeah,
right?
It is.
She's just kind of like sliding around and being like bumped around by skeletons as she's kind of shrieking and backing away, and then she trips over and falls onto a sail or whatever, you know.
I think the bit where she gets flung up and down on the sail is where you're like, what?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Why were there people flinging that sail up and down?
What were they doing? Were they supposed to be cleaning it? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, like how you dust it over the balcony. They were cleaning the sail.
But they were doing it under, like, inside the ship.
I think especially when all the other fight scenes and stuff are like really well choreographed. Like, they're so creative and engaging, and then this scene was the only one that stood out to me as a bit like, what's she getting flung around in the air for?
They just kind of wanted it to be a bit more action-packed when you find out that they're all skeletons, but it didn't really make sense without her going on this kind of Mr. Magoo adventure around the ship.
I do love this movie's vibe, though. Like, so often in this movie, people find excuses to cut ropes or hit a switch and get flung around. Like, this movie just loves flinging people around by ropes, and you know what? I love it too. It fucking rules.
It's great.
I mean, I feel like you want to compare it to a theme park ride, Reuben, but like, it's nothing like the theme park ride Pirates of the Caribbean.
No, it definitely has fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the people who made this movie had never actually seen the Pirates of the Caribbean theme park ride, and it's better for it.
Yeah, to its credit. Yeah. I think also as well, something I'll to cut a bit early in the notes, the pirates, like, in this, like, Jeffrey Rush and his crew are pretty instantly set up as like evil, but not like there's a sensible motivation for them, you know? Like, they've got they're being tortured. Their existence is like torturous, and I don't know. I just really like that. Like, from the get go, I can understand why they're doing what they're doing. They're not just cartoonishly evil pirates. they dabble in being evil pirates at times, like when they throw people off the plank and stuff. But like their core motivation actually makes sense.
I think
Like
there's a
this
bit
curse is awful, and
towards
they need to end it.
there's a bit towards the end where, yeah, like Barbosa gives the speech to all the men saying, like, we've suffered enough and we've been punished for our greed. And yeah, it talks about, like, I don't remember anything nice. And yeah, you actually feel for them. You're like, oh, poor pirates. But then there's because one of the things that they say is that they really miss like the taste of food. But there's that one scene where Barbosa and Elizabeth, like where he makes her come to have dinner. There's this like huge banquet on the table, and he's just then about 5 minutes later says like, "Oh, all this food turns to ash in my mouth." Like, what a waste of food, Barbosa. Why would you waste all of your money on that?
He's obsessed with apples, and I didn't notice it until this rewatch. But it's
Yeah,
so
he
great.
is too.
His entire character motivation effectively boils down to I want to eat an apple so bad.
It's actually quite sad when he dies. This is
Yeah,
obviously
and
a big
the
head.
apple
When he does
falls
the
out of
apple,
his
it's like, oh my god, he
hand.
was literally holding on to this. His
It
first
was
thing he
so
was going to do
close
was
to eating
eat
an
this
apple.
apple. I actually
Oh,
felt really sad
it's
for him.
tragic.
It's like, oh.
Poor bastard. All he wanted
Yeah.
was to eat a fucking apple. Just a Granny Smith.
Yeah. I think it's a really good little like character.
It's
I don't know if there's a term for
rehumanizing. It's
this.
really
Like, yeah,
humanizing. You're
but it
like,
is
oh
sort of
my
pictured
god.
as like a core character conceit. Like he likes apples, he wants to taste apples again, and then they get to use that, and it's silly, but like it's also effective.
It's also kind of really sweet because, again, going back to that scene that I'm apparently obsessed with where they're having the banquet, when he offers her the apple and she's like, oh God, is it poisoned? And then when you look back now, it's like he just wanted to watch somebody
How
enjoy an apple.
insulting! I know.
He
Oh my
just
god.
wanted to watch her enjoy a crispy apple. And she's like, oh, you're trying to
She
poison
threw it
me?
back in
It's
his
like, it's
face.
actually
I
so
know.
sad.
But you're right. Why did they have that food? Like it makes no sense for them to have this
And it was like
fucking
a
delicious
lot of food.
banquet.
It was already way too much food for two people, let alone one of who can't even eat or enjoy food.
Yeah.
Barbosa is such a tragic character. I feel so bad
He
for
actually
him.
is.
I didn't realize the bit. Yeah, he just wanted to watch Elizabeth eat an apple, and she fucking threw it back in his face. It's so harsh.
Especially because he did this to himself. Like I love this little through line that keeps coming up where like Jack escaped this curse because Barbosa like
Yeah, mutinied
upped in
him.
charge,
Yeah.
and then also threw Will Turner off before they knew they needed the blood to end the curse. Like he just kept fucking up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so back in Port Royal, Will rescues Jack and they team up and commandeer, not steal, a ship to rescue Elizabeth. So they take that ship, just the two of them, to Tortuga, which is also a real place. And they assemble like a motley crew of misfits. And using Jack's broken compass, they head off to. They're just following like Elizabeth's ship, basically. They all kind of get there at the same time. It doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, that's something that is fairly consistently nonsensical about this film is all the key party members always arrive at a location at the exact same time as the bad guys, right? Even though that shouldn't happen. Like there's a bit where later on Jack and Elizabeth get stranded and then get rescued and catch up to everybody in time for it all to go well, which really doesn't make any sense.
Despite the Black Pearl being the fastest ship in the Caribbean, that is established.
It's well established.
I'm just gonna say, Reuben, I don't know how well you remember movies 2 and 3, but if you think that's a problem in this film, wait till we get to Pirates 3.
Can't wait.
Yeah, like I think I already said this, but yeah, the bit with Tortuga, like that is very much just the vibe of the ride. Is you just like sitting there and just crazy shit going on everywhere, and you just got to like try to keep up with what's going on as all these people do drunken shenanigans. Yeah. In fact, as I was looking into that, the prison dog, like it has a paragraph on like the lore of the dog in the ride, which again, Wiki's saving riders everywhere because it's been a long time since I went on this ride, but I guarantee you don't learn all this shit about the dog on that ride.
Tell us the prison dog's backstory.
The prison dog was a domesticated dog which was found in the Castillo de Moro, fortress of Isla Tesoro. The dog was left with the keys to the cells in the fortress prison when the island was raided by the crew of the Wicked Wench. The fortress was one of the buildings set on fire with its piratical prisoners desperately attempting to lure the dog to their cell to escape.
Is this based on a real thing, or is this just like completely random?
My understanding is that's all just the description of how the dog fits into the ride.
Oh wow!
But is that like based off of an actual like dog and legend?
An actual
I think
jailhouse.
so.
I mean, it can't be.
It sounds like
doesn't-
it.
It sounds so.
I just
that
think-
being true and it just being the backstory to this ride are both equally nonsensical to me. So I don't know which is which.
No,
I
it wouldn't
choose to
surprise me
believe.
to learn that these rides have deep lore like this, because there are people who like obsess with theme parks and stuff. So I imagine there is actually a culture of like having this lore that is like in all the details, like the fact that this was on Isla Tesoro in the Castillo de Moro, like maybe that is written on some parts of the ride. And it's like, this is just the people who are obsessed with this stuff who kind of are stringing the plot together. Whereas all us other dipshits just are like, oh, that's neat.
But also, if you got asked to make a pirate ride, like, and you're unimaginative like me, you're going to look up cool pirate facts. And you're going to look up cool shit like this prison dog and be like, oh, that's neat. I'm going to put that in the ride.
Also, there's a bit as Jack and Will steal this like ship, or so commandeer this ship, where they sneak onto it by like tipping over a little boat and like walking on the bottom of the ocean with it and using it for air. But that doesn't make. How could they have weighed it down?
It's funny because when that scene started, and I thought, like, I knew it was coming up because I can remember it from the movie, and I thought that's kind of a great idea. And then I thought, hey, no, that there's definitely no way that would work in real life. Like, it took me a couple of seconds to realize, like, hang on a minute, that wouldn't work.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool, whatever.
It's just because magical curses aside, this movie's somewhat realistic if you assume all ropes on ships have that amount of fucking strain put on them that they can fling people around like that. It's just a weird scene because of how clearly not realistic it is.
They definitely would not be strong enough to hold down that amount of air that far under the water. But it's such a great little scene. And where Will just goes, I can't decide if this is mad or genius. And he's like, people often confuse them or something. And I was like, God, this dialogue is so good.
The line between the two is often like a lot closer than you think or something like that.
Yeah. Great scene.
Again, way too many good lines in this film for what it should have. And I think Reuben already mentioned, I want to know that story of how Gibbs went from Norrington's first mate to like living on Tortuga.
Yeah.
To being a pirate, to being a failed, washed up pirate.
To being a drunk, yeah.
Because it's like sort of implied that he was at some point a fairly successful pirate, right? Because like Jack goes to him and asks him to sort of be his first mate and recruit a crew. So he was like a successful first mate in the Navy.
Yeah.
Then he was a successful pirate, and then he was an unsuccessful pirate. And this should be a film.
How did he become just a drunk? Because he clearly is a good first mate.
I actually looked it up because I was like, I don't remember if this is explained in 2 and 3. It's not. It hasn't been explained.
This is the one black hole on the Pirates Wiki.
Waiting to be told.
The Pirates Wiki tells you who the allies and minions of the prison dog are, but not the backstory to Gibbs.
Minions? What, the cockroaches on the ground?
Listed on the prison dog's wiki page is minions.
Oh, what is
No. Can I guess this? Would the dog's minions include like a whole tribe of cannibals?
The only thing that is mentioned is minions, Pelagostos, which is not a link or anything, so I don't know who that is or what that
is. It's a tribe of cannibals. We'll get
That's true, I'd forgotten that.
There you go. One other fun fact about Prison Dog, maybe not so fun of a fact, actually. The Prison Dog has appeared in 2 attractions. One is the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction, and 2 is Pirates of the Caribbean Battle for the Sunken Treasure, where it appears as a skeleton.
Aww.
How grim is that? They're like, oh, we got to bring this dog back. But the dog wouldn't still be alive. So let's just put a dog
They're
skeleton somewhere in
calculating.
this
Well,
ride.
when you calculate the time between the two, there's just no way that the dog was still
Yeah.
alive. Better make it a skeleton.
Pretty grim.
But yes, so both ships reach the island at the same time. There's all sorts of like shenanigans and fights and little betrayals and stuff before basically Elizabeth and Jack just kind of trade positions, with Jack now being captured and Elizabeth running away with Will.
Yeah.
And so then there's like a chase scene where the Black Pearl catches up to Will and Elizabeth again, and they fight for a bit, and it doesn't work, and then they all get captured.
Yeah. This is
And-
the filler portion of the film, I think.
It is.
Yeah, I'm
I
not
got
gonna lie.
lost.
I expected the movie to finish when everyone hit the Isla de Muerta, the climactic part of the movie, and it's an hour and a half in, and then they all sort of leave again. All this shit happens, and they just go back, and it's just like I think you could have cut out 45 minutes of the last hour of this movie.
Between the
It's
first
still-
trip to the Isla and the second, could have
Yeah.
cut basically all of that out.
Yeah, a lot of random stuff happened that I don't really remember even sitting here now.
I started to tune out in the last hour.
Yeah,
for bits and
same.
pieces, yeah, it's they could have replaced that hour with about 5 minutes that sort of set up the same beats almost as effectively.
The one thing that they needed to get there was the scene of Elizabeth and Jack being drunk singing Yo Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me. Because that, again, presumably is in the ride, and they just needed to get that into the film.
Yeah, I think I can't remember where I read this now. It was somewhere on the wiki, but like the guy who was originally like tasked with creating the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, back in the 50s or whatever the fuck. That was the first song he ever wrote. Was Yo Ho, Pirate's Life for Me.
That's
So
cute.
that's a fun fact. Like, I mean, talk about nailing it first try.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I think another reason this whole segment falls flat is like the big action set piece between the two Isla de Muerta sections is this like ship combat, and I don't get ship combat. Like, I don't quite see where the skill is involved. Like, they kind of pull one sneaky trick by dropping the anchor, but everything's so slow that like the Barbossa's pirates are already ready to react to it by the time it matters.
Yeah.
I just don't. This scene didn't carry the same tension like a car chase scene would have. Whereas I feel like that's the
That's the
vibe they're
vibe,
trying
yeah.
to play off of. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
much
know.
harder to. It doesn't translate into an action scene all that well. There's
Yeah,
something
like they-
terrifying about the idea of being like sitting in this boat and then a cannonball comes flying at you. But in terms of the mechanics of how the battle works, like it's really clunky.
It's mainly
Yeah.
just for Pigoletti and Rigoletti, or whatever they're called, I don't remember, to have a few comedy beats, I think. That's really the only thing that happens in this battle that I can remember.
Yeah, when he gets the fork in his eyeball.
Good moment. Top tier.
Classic. Oh, we haven't even talked about there's a monkey called Jack.
Oh yeah, I
Monkey's
like how he's
fun.
called the Monkey Jack. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, Barbossa is just great.
He's such a good
He's
character.
a piece of shit.
Very charismatic.
Hey, you know who I'd totally forgotten existed was the big, like, scary pirate who was always bullying the two, like, weird
Yeah.
pirates.
Who seems
Yeah.
to
Did
be
not remember
Barbossa's
his
first
character
mate.
at all. Yeah, had no recollection of him.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about.
He
him as
brought
well.
zero personality. He looked very cool. He brought zero interesting personality to the film.
I guess for me, it was like I only really remembered the characters who are in 2 and 3, and I don't think he is.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see if he even has a name, but I cannot find
Oh,
him
he
on the
will.
wiki. He must though, right?
If they gave one to Pintel and Rigetti or whatever the fuck, they must have given one to him.
I mean, I'm not finding it, I'll be honest.
Okay, well, as Reuben searches, I'll continue through the movie because basically now that everyone's captured, Barbossa strands Jack and Liz on an island, but they get off it just surprisingly quickly. And then everyone goes back to Isla de Muerta. There's a bunch more shenanigans. Everyone changes sides a couple more times again. But the curse manages to get lifted right as Jack shoots Barbossa and he drops his apple and dies.
He drops his apple. But you know what? That death scene, man, when Barbossa's like, I feel cold.
Mm.
I was like, oh my God. Like, because it's just like he feels, and you're like, oh my God, he feels, oh, he feels cold. Oh my God, he's dead. Like, Jeffrey Rush does such a good job.
This movie in general just does a surprisingly good job at not drawing black and white villains. There's a lot of grey. Like,
Mm.
the evil ghost pirates are still, like, empathetical. Like, that's not a
I
word.
don't think it's
You
a
know what I
word,
mean? Like,
but I see what you mean. I can tell what
yeah,
you're trying to
Mm.
say.
they make them sympathetic. And even, like, as we touched on before, like, Norrington and even Elizabeth's dad have their moments. Like, Elizabeth's dad, well, I mean, he just kind of folds to whatever the room seems to think at any given point, really.
He has that
Um,
action scene where he almost loses a fight to a hand.
Yeah, I loved that. So good.
What a fuckwit.
But it's so true.
Yeah.
It's like everybody has their it's like a more thing of like everybody has their vices, or everybody has their sort of
Yeah.
like, their price or something. Like, you know,
Elizabeth and Will are kind of the only exception. They're the two who, like, I feel like the movie presents as, like, unobjectively
Good.
the goodies.
Mm.
Yeah.
Like, they're
But then
virtuous.
they definitely question that late in the later films that gets put to the test.
Yeah, well, we'll get there.
And
But in this film, they're like the unobjectable goodies, and then
Yeah.
everyone else is like
Everybody's just so
not
grey.
bad though.
well,
Like everyone else
if I
has reasons.
if I may, I think there's one other unequivocally good character, apart from the fact that he wants to marry someone who is like 20 years younger than him, and that's Norrington. All right, he's a real champion, just here to try and defend the world from piracy and look good doing it, and I'm all for it. He's the Inspector Javert of this film, and I'm so
He
on
is.
his team.
But yeah, because they kind of set him up as the baddie in a way. Because it's like he's marrying someone fucking half his age from the start. He is the system. He's insisting on killing people because they save his fiance. Like it's like
Yeah,
you feel like he's meant to be the baddie, and then at the end, when Elizabeth's like, "I want to be with Will," he's like, "Oh, is that what you really want?" She's like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Well,
fair
all the
enough.
best to you."
Yeah,
And it's just like,
exactly.
I
Yeah.
was expecting him to pull like nice guy bullshit, like,
Nah, he is
and
principled, and you can't fault
yeah,
him for that.
Yeah, he's actually a pretty good guy. I really liked that they kind of had their sort of bad. He actually ended up being a pretty top bloke.
well, because
Yeah.
the other thing is you'd think with this movie they would lean more into government bad because the heroes are sort of meant to be pirates.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like for the pirates to be at all sympathetic, you have to say that the government is shit and totalitarian and authoritarian and stuff, which it was. That's a super easy like position to take for these times.
But they
And
don't really do that.
no, they don't.
They portray it as incompetent, but not malicious, right?
But yeah, well, I guess they
Well,
sort of portrayed as, again, it's like everybody has their thing that sort of makes them bad in a certain scenario. So like
Yeah.
Norrington's thing is that he can be quite uncompromising, and he's a rule follower,
Yeah.
like he's a by the book guy, and he struggles to like sort of make allowances. And that was his big thing at the end, was when they weirdly cheesily sort of go like, maybe sometimes piracy is okay, and he sort of actually concedes, which he's not really been willing to do for the rest of the film.
Yeah, it does feel a bit out of character.
And then like
doesn't it?
even the pirates, it's like they're all still, and they show that there's some nobility among pirates, and that's the whole thing with Will's dad, is like he was a pirate and a good man. And the pirates are all sort of greedy, but and then when they break the code to come back for Jack, like, so they kind of, I think on both sides are sort of, yeah.
There is one brief moment where the evil pirates get a bit rapey, and you're like, oh, that's too far for this film.
Yeah.
But apart from that, you're right. They are more or less fine. They're rebels rather than murderers and rapists.
Yeah.
Well, like Barbossa's crew comes about as close as it does to just being bad. And they just have that little glimmer of like they're being tortured by this curse. That's kind of why they've turned out so bad. But like, yeah, even the other pirates, like as just said, like they ditch them at one point because of the code, and then they eventually come back. But it's like it doesn't like glorify or heroify pirates in the way I might have expected coming in. Like it sort of shows them as kind of shitty, but not totally shitty.
Yeah, that's very true. Like, I think exactly, like, that's totally right, that they don't glorify it. Like, they're still portrayed as being sort of not very good people, and they don't
Yeah.
have good values, and they're sort of greedy, and that's the life that they've chosen to lead or been pushed into or whatever. But that doesn't make them like deep down bad people at the same time, which is probably a very good lesson.
Yeah, I agree.
Even Jack Sparrow is an idiot savant, right? Like he's so clearly an idiot in so many ways, but yet competent.
Well, and I think he's set up right from the start as just like on his own team. Like there's lines where Elizabeth's like, "Whose side is Jack on?" And Will's like, "At the moment."
Yeah.
Exactly.
But like at the
like-
same time, like right at the start, they established very early on when, Elizabeth falls in and he's like, "So will you be saving her?" And the guy's like, "I can't swim." And he's like, just looks at the other guy and he's just like,
Yeah.
"Oh, says something else." And he's just like, "Okay, I guess I'm going in."
Yeah, like, he's not a total piece of shit, but
Yeah.
he's also not really set up as a hero.
No, he's very like, I don't know, not even an anti-hero. Like
No,
even
just-
less of a hero than that.
He rides
Yeah.
the line very well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're approaching the end of the film. Jack is about to be hanged for his crimes after they kill Barbosa and stuff, and then Will and the other pirates team up to stage a rescue, and it works.
Well, it's not the other
sort of.
pirates. They're not really there until the very end, right?
Well,
Will-
the parrot comes around, so I assume
Yeah.
they were in on it, or like Will wrote them a note or something.
I don't
It's
know.
a bit
I
unclear
kind
on
of
all
got the
that.
sense that parrot's just there to be like, "Hey, we're coming too, so hold out." And then Will's like, "Oh, I better free him so that he's not dead by the time they get here." I don't know. Maybe you're right.
It wasn't
a bit
super clear. It was left
unclear.
mysterious, probably because they didn't really know what was happening. There's a couple of points in this film where I feel like they maybe chose style over sense. Like there's
Yeah.
been a few scenes where they've gone for like a good scene, and that if you think about it too hard, you go, that doesn't make any sense. But if you don't think about it too hard, it's
Then it's
very
perfect.
easy to gloss over these little plot holes.
They're
Yeah.
very fun.
Yeah.
Like they get away with it because it's fun.
Because I remember thinking that when I was watching it too, I was like, I don't understand how the parrot sort of came into, and then I just literally went, no, well, it was cool.
I mean, my read on it is that they were like waiting because their part in the rescue was to like
Just
you
to
know,
sail around
appear-
the corner at the exact right
yeah,
moment.
to
Yeah.
appear at the last minute, but so nobody would know that his rescue was coming.
Yeah, I guess.
But they probably could have spared one or two people to help Will. Like
But like the bit where Jack's going on his whole rant about like, he's about to say like, today you'll remember as the day that you almost caught me, and then he just falls mid sentence. And I was like, that's fucking hilarious.
So
I had like
good.
a good chuckle. I was like, that I knew it was coming even. I remembered it happening and I still had such a good laugh. I was like, God, that was so well done. It was really
it's
funny.
such a great callback.
It
like
was.
he's already turned that into his catchphrase in this one movie, and they're already playing off it.
And
in the
even
same
going
line.
back, but when Norrington throws back in his face, I was like, I guess we'll remember this is the day where Jack Sparrow almost got away. Like they just keep coming back to that line. It's always funny.
My other favorite is like that might be the worst pirate I've ever seen.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then Norrington's mate, when he finally escapes, he's like, that might be the best pirate I've ever seen.
And his face
Well,
is just like, oh.
The classic
So
to me
good.
is the worst pirate captain I've ever heard of, and then Jack goes, but you've heard of me, which is just such a good response.
It's actually been a meme lately. I've seen that a few
Iconic.
times as a meme.
I have as well. Yeah. Like, but you have
Yeah,
heard of them.
like you are without a doubt the worst insert word that I've ever heard of. Oh yes, but you have heard of me.
Good film. This is just a good film, huh?
It is
Yeah.
so good.
It's just a fun movie. Like this movie gets fun and has it.
It was so much better than I remember.
Yeah.
I remember it being way cheesier with like less interesting characters and less good dialogue. And I remember it being more flashy, but it wasn't as flashy, and the effects held up really well.
Yeah.
Like just
The fact that
well, I think the bit where I was really like, wow, these effects actually are still good and are actually well done was where, yeah, Jack and Barbosa were fighting and they were like sort of switching between being in the moonlight and not being in the moonlight, and it was sort of flicking between them being like skeletal,
Yeah.
dead looking guys and not being, and it actually actually held up pretty well. And also that was just a really awesome idea. I loved that bit.
Yeah, I agree. I was amazed at, like, considering this came out in 2003. these effects, particularly ones where they're flicking them on and off mid-shot, hold up very well.
Yeah.
There's only a few moments in that first scene where Elizabeth gets thrown around on the sail that we've already ragged on a bit. There's like a few moments in that one where they looked very CGI, but for the most part, it's a very like they fitted into the aesthetic very naturally. Maybe they just did that one Elizabeth scene last, and they were running out of budget.
Well, maybe because there was a lot of skeletons in every shot, they kind of like half-assed it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or for the big reveal, they couldn't quite hide them in the dark as much, I guess.
That's true. Like
True.
the flicking in between in the cave with the beams of moonlight might have actually made it easier in a way because you've got so much movement and you only need to have it for a little bit.
And they were sort
Maybe
of far away shots as well. Like they weren't right up close. It was sort of like from, halfway across the room type shot. So they managed to make it
might have
work
been
really
very
well.
tactical.
Yeah.
Like that was one of the things we noticed. Georgia and our other sister Hannah came up a couple of weeks ago, and we watched like Lord of the Rings in 4K, and you could see the moments where they used the CGI cleverly, so it had aged pretty well because it was like back then less was more. So that might have been what they did a bit of in this film.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely strategy around it. Even these days where the CGI is really good, if you are overly ambitious, you can always tell. Like there's that slight, just especially with faces.
Well, that's The Hobbit. Like,
Yeah,
really,
exactly. Oh, that's exactly right. Yep.
The Hobbit stands opposite Lord of the Rings, and its CGI hasn't aged as well, despite it being like a decade younger.
Yeah.
And it's because they like over relied on it.
Yeah, exactly. Rather than doing the like actually people's artistic abilities in real life, like doing what do you call it? Like where they actually did like like prosthetics and stuff for Lord of the Rings versus the CGI. Like and all the, orcs just looked so genuinely scary. And even like watching it the other day in 4K, I was like, they look real. Like the orcs look like real orcs.
Yeah. There was like one point on Pelennor Fields where I could tell that it was just like because for some of the big wide shots of Pelennor Fields, they were clearly using like little model army type things.
Yeah.
And there was like one shot where I was like, oh, I can tell this is like a group of little CGI Age of Empires people.
Yeah, totally.
But like 9 times out of 10, it was flawless.
Well, this movie was also pretty good.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of diversions to like other films and TV shows in this episode.
That's just how this show goes. Yeah.
I think we've done that in every episode.
Probably.
I'm pretty sure we
feel like
have.
in Star Wars it was more like diversion to weird, really deep Star Wars lore mostly.
That's probably true. Well, maybe as we get further into pirates,
there'll be more weird, deep pirates lore, I'm sure.
What was the name of the sleaze bagano?
Yeah, it was like Miller. I
think it was Elon Sleaze Bagano.
It was. It was so good. Oh god! Every time I think of that, I laugh out loud. Sleaze bagano, and how then there was the whole thing about him ending up writing a book about death stick addiction and becoming an Alcoholics Anonymous type. Like, what the fuck? That's so good.
I do because obviously we did those Star Wars episodes, and in the meantime, I watched like The Mandalorian, and just before we started this series, I watched like all of Clone Wars and Rebels, and I got to admit, as much as I've spent my entire life dedicated to saying Star Wars isn't that good, I've missed it the last like month and a half of my life, just because I missed having something to shit on as I'm watching it. Like its lore is just so wild.
So fun.
It is ridiculous. That's the funnest part about it. I'm excited for us to get to some more of the weird and ridiculous shit in the Pirates films as well.
Yeah, Pirates 2 and 3 definitely start to take it to some weird places.
Yep.
And it's going to be very fun to talk about it. And then we'll finish after Pirates 3.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll convince you all to watch all of the films. I want to see how it ends. I want to see how the Pirates saga concludes.
I think they're making a 6th one right now.
Are they really?
So we could watch them all to do our homework for that.
Because there's been a whole thing about whether Johnny Depp would come back. And then they're doing a spin-off with Margot Robbie starring as well.
Oh, shit. That's not
awesome. The 6th movie.
Oh,
it's like a separate like Pirates franchise, but not a numbered one.
That sounds
Um,
brilliant. She is perfect, the perfect cast to be
yeah,
a new Jack Sparrow
I think
type.
she'll nail it if she
Oh,
goes for like Jack
100%.
Sparrow rip-off vibes.
Yeah.
I would be so down for that. As an aside, I only found out yesterday when I was writing the notes for this. I haven't seen Pirates 5. I thought I had
Yeah, I haven't either.
because I was like, I don't remember what happens in it. I remembered what happened in 4 because I hate it. And then I was like, did I ever actually see 5? And I Googled a picture of it and I was like, oh, I did see it because I remember this bad guy, Salazar. And then about a week later, I was like, try to read the plot to remember what actually happens in it. And I got about halfway through and realized, I haven't seen that. What I saw was on the Today Show, which is like a breakfast news thing here in Australia. They did like a half an hour story on how they did the CGI for Salazar, and I watched that 4 years ago and somehow turned that in my head to I've seen the movie.
I mean, that's basically, I'm sure, more interesting than the movie will end up being.
Yeah, so I would be kind of excited now because now that I know there's one I haven't seen, I kind of want to see it.
Yeah, and you're going to be able to tell us in depth how they did the CGI for Salazar. We're all on tenterhooks to find out.
Well, you'll have to wait till then.
All right. Well, with that, I guess that's the end of the show.
So thank you for being patrons to everyone who is doing that and listening to this. We wouldn't be able to make this or our other shows without your support. So thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bye.
We need like a sign off. Like
what's the
yo ho, yo ho ho.
Is there a pirate? You know how ahoy is like hello? Is there a pirate goodbye? Am I forgetting it?
I think it's bye hoy. Bye hoy.
Na